Hi guys. In our last video, we learned about Zentangles and we learned how to draw 5 different ones. Um, After we learned how to draw those 5, we then placed them in our own tile, and that's what we ended up turning in. So for this week, we are going to learn 3 new Zentangles, and then you will do some research on your own to learn 2 different Zentangles. You can either look that up on YouTube or just use Google, or you could even just make them up. That's what's nice about Zentangling. So remember, you can use any sort of pen that you have, whether it's a Sharpie or an ink pen, or even if you have like a fancy fountain pen, that would also work. You'll need one of those, and then you'll need a pencil along with your paper. So the first one that we are going to learn is called mushrooms. And to start it, what we are going to do is we are just going to kind of draw little organic shapes kind of all over the paper. Let's have maybe one in the middle. And so once I have those, these are going to be the center of our mushrooms. And they're kind of going to look like the ones that like grow on trees. I guess maybe similar to lichen, not necessarily mushrooms. But we are just going to kind of repeat this pattern to create concentric shapes, which are just like shapes within shapes. And remember, we have this square just to kind of confine our space so that way we know where we're working in. But when you get to working in your tile, what's nice about it is you can kind of dictate the shape that you want. And you can add as many concentric circles as you want. Obviously, the more that you add, the larger the little mushrooms will become. I kind of like that. And so next I could fill in this background, maybe with some stripes or some polka dots. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just going to fill it in. I'm not gonna fill in every space because this is just a demonstration. If I wanted to, I could even use like colored pencils to add like a different color into the background, or maybe if I had markers. So again, what's nice about Zentangles is you can kind of be in control of what you want it to look like. There's a lot of freedom in that. And then as always, since we add advanced shading to all of our tangles, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to kind of highlight, well, I guess the opposite of highlight. I'm going to shade where they start to kind of overlap each other to give it that depth. Another thing I could do too is if I wanted to make it look as if it's kind of going back into space, I could add shading to the outer ring. to start to get it to push back if I wanted to. So there's a lot of freedom and choice in what you're able to do. So that's mushroom. So the next one we are going to do is called nacho. And just so you know, I just completely make these names up. So what we are going to do is we are going to start by making a triangle, but notice that the corners do not connect. And so I am just going to come in and I'm going to add triangles. Kind of wherever I want. You'll notice the more that you get, it will start to kind of fill in itself. This one really tests your making one line at a time, because instinctually you want to connect all of these lines together. So we would continue this until it fills our entire space in our tile. And so next, all we're going to do is we are going to add lines, kind of going whichever way we want. It's like the ridges on a tortilla chip. And so we could continue to fill our entire space, but for demonstration purposes only, I'm going to move on to advanced shading. And I can shade this however I want. Maybe I just want to kind of highlight some of the chips. Maybe I only have one side shaded on some of it. So that's nacho. And our last one, trying to think of what I want to do. Let's do one that's kind of similar to one that we have already done. So get your box ready. And this one is going to be called feathers. So for feathers, it is going to be similar to Wi-Fi, which is what we learned in the last video. But we're just going to make them a little bit more kind of like teardrop shape as opposed to being very circular. So we'll start in the corner. And And so all we're doing is we're just kind of adding feathers or feather shapes in every kind of armpit of the last two that we made. And maybe you have some that are a little bit longer, maybe you have some that are a little bit stubbier. It's your choice, really. So we would continue that to fill our space. Then we're going to come back in and we are going to add one that's kind of in between. And so then I am going to fill that in to be solid. Remember, if you don't want it to be solid, you could always add a different pattern if you wanted to. Then I'll come in with my shading, and I think for this one I'm just going to shade kind of some random feathers. Just to give it a little bit of depth. So once you have drawn all three of these Zentangles, next what you're going to do is you are going to either create or research two of your own Zentangles. Make sure that they're not just like the exact same ones we've done, but maybe a striped background instead of polka dots. Once you have created two on your own, then you are going to... Sorry, that was my dogs. Once you have created your two, you are then going to use the 5 that you have for today, and you are going to make another tile. Do make sure that you experiment a little bit differently. Don't just create the exact same outline, the exact same border and string, because it's kind of fun to be able to experiment. So, yeah, happy tangling.